Welcome to the Smith Publicity webinar series, covering a range of book publicity and marketing topics for authors and publishers alike.
So welcome everyone to our Q2 webinar. I'm Marissa Eigenbrud, our president here at Smith Publicity, and I am joined for our From Pages to Stages, Understanding the Intersection Between Authorship and Speaking webinar with none other than the absolutely fabulous Michael Port. So Michael is, as you'll see in the chat over here, Michael is an entrepreneur, celebrated speaker, and New York Times and Wall Street Journal, RIP for now, best-selling author, that bestseller list we missed so much, of 9 books that have been translated into 29 languages. After spending a decade delivering thousands of paid speeches on the world's biggest stages, Michael sold his first company, Book Yourself Solid Worldwide, and founded Heroic Public Speaking, now Heroic, with his wife, Amy Port, where they developed and nurtured the next generation of thought leaders, as well as CEOs and founders, best-selling authors, business owners, and movement leaders. And you'll learn more about Heroic at heroicpublicspeaking.com. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. This is going to be such an awesome conversation overall.
I sure hope so.
So I want to jump right into the last few years. It's been a time. It has been a time for the speaking world. It has been a time for what it looks like as being an author who's also a speaker, the flashy individuals that we both get to work so frequently with. So this is a reflection a bit as a speaker yourself, as CEO of Heroic. Give us a little, high-level view from your perspective of how the landscape of speaking has really changed post-pandemic.
Sure. So, of course, we're all aware that when the pandemic hit, it really shut down in-person speaking. So what that did was it consolidated most of the opportunities at the top end of the circuit, because if you have very, very little demand and a lot of supply, then the folks that have demand, they have their choice. And so it meant people who were just starting out were having more trouble. People who'd been, making their way for a couple of years, but hadn't really got a foothold or built a sustainable career, had some trouble. But the people who'd been working for a while actually found it was often a pretty productive time for them, because they were doing more virtual, and they were, instead of 1 or 2 gigs a week, they were doing 5 or 6 gigs a week.
Yeah.
Because they were doing it from home. So for some folks, it worked well, and for others, it was really pretty terrible. When things opened back up, it really was like floodwaters. And because so many of the people who were at the working end of the circuit had been so busy for about 1.5 years, 2 years, the meeting planners were getting a little sick of them and were looking for new faces to bring on the stage, and really were looking for more diversity on the stage. That was a huge change in the industry, and a wonderful change. So you started seeing a lot more new and different faces, and that has continued since then. So we're seeing lots more variety in people on the stage, backgrounds, topics. The big topics are still the big topics: leadership, sales, marketing, et cetera. Those are pretty consistent. But the biggest thing that's actually changed is the lead time between when a meeting planner is looking for speakers and when the event is actually being held. It's shortened.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing now, at least the data suggests this, is that the average time between when a meeting planner is looking for their speakers and when they're actually holding the event is 4.6 months. Now, when I started speaking 20 years ago, there were events that I would book 18 months in advance.
Right. Wow.
It's a very, very different process. So, and of course, virtual can be 3 weeks, 4 weeks, even less sometimes. So that's the bigger change, because they're a little, still a little more skittish about making longer term choices too early.
Yeah.
And so that's what we've seen, but it's a great time. I mean, Heroic has been, you know, seeing more and more really interesting and substantial people coming in to this industry year after year. And, we've been doing this for 10 years, but the people we're seeing coming in are really serious folks, meaning great careers, really smart, really thoughtful, who want to do deep work. And that's the area we focus on. We don't train people to sell from the stage. That's not our thing. We know that if you're best in class, you'll sell more than you could need to sell. When you deliver a product that is absolutely transformational, the demand will be high. I mean, that's, again, back to basic economics. We keep looking at basic economics. If you deliver a product that's undeniable, you'll increase demand for that product, which means you can increase your prices when you're selling that product. And so, we believe that you should do lots of free gigs in the beginning to build momentum, because in order to produce a sustainable speaking career, you need a speech that people want to buy. Now, this is critically important. It sounds kind of obvious, but it's not typically how most people think about this work. Very often people will call up our admissions team and say, listen, I'm just getting started. I just need some business tips. Like, what should I do? Some business tips to book speeches. Well, we say, so how's your speech? What's the quality of your speech like? And they would say, well, no, I mean, it's great because I'm charming. I'm great. People love me. And, I'm an expert at what I do. And, I've got my slides. And then, I know my structure because I can look at my monitor, we call it the dummy monitor, but they look at, and then I can just wing it inside, that structure, which tells us that no matter how much business training you get, if that's the speech, you can't build a sustainable speech.
Right.
The number one litmus test for a sustainable speech is whether or not that speech produces stage side leads each and every time you deliver it. A stage side lead is a lead that you earn because somebody saw the speech. Now, it may happen right there at the edge of the stage. Somebody may come up to you and say, hey, that was amazing. We've got an event, in Provo, Utah on April 22nd. Are you available and what's your fee?
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll actually, in the middle of the speech, they'll go to your website and fill out a form and ask you the same question. Sometimes, you'll go home and you'll get a call from an assistant, say, listen, my boss saw you. We've got an event. Are you available? What's your fee? Those leads close faster at higher fees with fewer objections than any other type of lead. Now, if you're not getting stage side leads, it means the speech is not yet at the level at which you can commercially sustain a speaking career. So think about it like this. When you're famous, people buy, or meeting planners buy you, then the speech, then the idea. When you're not famous, meeting planners buy the speech, then the idea, and then you.
Yeah.
And so, because you, if you're not famous, don't do anything for the meeting planner if the speech isn't transformational. So it's really important to understand the meeting planner's perspective. And if you don't understand how the meeting planner goes about booking their events, it's very, very hard to understand the economics of the speaking industry. So when a meeting planner books a conference, and let's say it's a 2-day conference, generally they have 4 keynotes. They have a keynote each morning and a keynote each afternoon.
Yeah.
And then throughout the rest of the day, they will have breakout sessions. So they'll have many breakout sessions, and there may be 10, 20, 30 or more breakout sessions running at a time. They always start with their anchor speakers. Now, their anchor speakers are their keynote speakers because they need to build the marketing of the event around those anchor speakers. And so when a meeting planner is trying to book their anchor speakers, they pull from 4 different buckets. They have 4 different buckets from which they pull. Now, the buckets they pull from will depend a bit on the size of their budget, because some buckets are more expensive than other buckets.
Yeah.
But let's say they have a substantial budget and they're booking their anchor speakers. Well, the first thing they'll do is they'll reach into the first most valuable bucket, and that is the athlete, actor, and astronaut bucket. These are the people who are worldly famous. These are the people who they cannot walk into a mall without being mobbed. These people make $250,000, $500,000, $600,000 or more dollars a speech. Why? Because they put butts in seats. So if you're booking a big conference, you need speakers that can headline that conference. So you're not particularly concerned about the quality of their speech. You want it to be good. It can't suck, right? That's really embarrassing for a meeting planner. But it's got to be good enough. And sometimes they don't even have them do speeches. They just have them do an interview on stage because they don't think they can deliver a speech, because often they can't. But they're so famous, people want to just see them and hear from them and take a picture with them. So that's the first bucket. Most of us do not land in that bucket. Maybe there's somebody here who does, but most of us don't.
Any astronauts in the audience, right?
And you can't just be a regular astronaut. You have to be like a Mark Kelly astronaut. You have to be a famous astronaut. Okay. The next bucket that the meeting planners pull from is the A-list alternate bucket. Now, the A-list alternate is somebody whose name you might not immediately recognize, but when you hear the next 4 to 6 words after their name, you say, oh, I'd like to see them.
Yeah.
You mentioned that your husband, you and your husband like to watch Jeopardy. And we were chatting before we started. And so you will probably know who this person is. But when I heard this person's name the first time, I said, who's that? This is a great example of an A-list alternate. So if I said Ken Jennings, you would know who Ken Jennings is. But most people don't know who Ken Jennings is. Ken Jennings is the winningest contestant on Jeopardy, or he was prior to COVID. For some reason, after COVID, people started winning a lot more money. They cracked some code, but that's for another.
Now he's the host. So
now he's a host. So okay, well that makes him more famous. So he's probably more than an A-list alternate now if he's become the host.
He got the upgrade.
Okay, so he got the upgrade. So maybe he's now in that next bucket. But if I said to you Yancey Strickler, do you know who that is? No. Yancey Strickler is the founder of Kickstarter.
Okay. Well, now I know.
Now, if you wanted to start a tech company, you'd want to hear Yancey Strickler. That's pretty cool. So that's an A-list alternate. Most of us don't fall into that bucket, but maybe a few of us here do. If you do, great. At a conference with a smaller budget, you may be the A-lister because they can't afford, $250,000 or $500,000 for a speaker. So they go to the A-list alternate bucket as their first choice. Okay. Now, some people are getting a little demoralized because they're thinking, wait a minute, we're already through 2 buckets and I don't fit in any of these buckets.
Yeah.
Hang on, I'm getting to you. Bucket number 3, industry icon. The industry icon bucket is uniquely built to support a particular industry. So for example, the CEO of Domino's Pizza would be an industry icon that would be a great headliner at a fast food conference.
Yeah.
That'd be a big deal, big get. But you probably wouldn't book that person at, say, a wellness conference. So, no, or a yoga industry conference. Probably not. So the industry icon is often relevant to specific industries, but they get big bucks too, and they can put butts in seats as a result. Once again, we're 3 buckets in, and most of us are going, "Ay vey, what do I do?" Okay. The 4th bucket, this is your bucket.
Yeah.
This is your bucket. This is the bucket that is, in fact, the meeting planner's favorite bucket. The meeting planner relies on the speakers in this bucket to create a transformational experience for the audience. Whereas the first 3 buckets help them put butts in seats. People get excited to get an autograph, get a picture. But this 4th bucket, this is the bucket that when a meeting planner finds a speaker who's in this bucket, what we call a surprise and delight speaker, they go to that speaker again and again and again, because they know that speaker can deliver every single time the same quality speech without fail, reliably, and they can create a transformational experience for the audience that gets the audience talking. When they go back to their office, they're saying, "Look, I got a picture with Magic Johnson, but oh my God, I just heard this woman, Marissa, from this publicity firm, I don't even know what it was, talking about something that blew my mind, totally changed the way I see the world." Now, to be fair to Magic, Magic's actually a really good speaker, but because he's worked
I don't know if
on
I'd be able to trump the Magic
No,
experience.
I think Magic's kind of magic, But I just use it as an example because it's a really important element. So what happens is this speaker comes out and does a keynote, and the audience is like, who's this person? And they don't know, but they become very quickly surprised and delighted by this speaker. And meeting planners also love this speaker because they're the cheapest speaker. Now, they might be $25,000 a speech,
Sure.
which is a lot of money, but compared to $150,000, it's nothing.
Yeah.
And so the surprise and delight speaker can do something very unique. They live at the intersection of entertainment and insight. And that's what creates a transformational experience. Because if you're all entertainment, 100% entertainment, you're the after dinner comedian, and maybe you'll get $5,000, $7,500, something like that. If you're
entertained, but there wasn't a lot of that takeaway.
Yeah, nothing's changing. You're like, "Oh, that was funny. Oh, great, thanks." Okay. But nothing's changing. If it's heavy information, really brainy stuff, you're like, "Oh my God, this is brainy stuff." It may feel like a lecture, like a college lecture. And you think,
Sure.
"Okay, that was a lot, but my head hurts. Okay, I'll go look at those notes like in a month."
Right.
But the speaker that can cross over those two, where they can create an entertaining experience that delivers insight after insight after insight, that's a surprise and delight speaker. And you cannot do that by winging a speech. This is really, really important. For those of you that want to be paid to speak, think about it. How long did it take you to write your book? I mean, seriously, how long did it take you to write your book? Did you write your book in a weekend? I hope not. One of those courses. I wrote my book in a weekend.
A year and a half. 5 years from start to finish.
Correct. So the amount of time that you put into a keynote speech that you want to be paid for, and let me tell you something, you're going to make a lot more money on your keynote speaking than you are on your books.
Oh yeah.
Right. So
over here in the book world telling you
do
sorry,
4 speeches.
You won't make money. You won't make money on selling books by itself.
4 speeches at 25 grand, you just made 100 grand. It's going to take you a lot of work to make 100 grand on a book. Now, maybe you'll get $100,000 advance, but that's going to take a while to earn out.
Good luck today too on that.
Baby. So the reason I mention it is because very rarely do speakers put a lot of time and effort into the development of the speech itself. And what happens is they think their job is to market themselves as a big deal speaker or to market themselves as a great speaker. But the easiest way to build a sustainable speaking career is to actually be a great speaker and deliver a referable speech, a speech that produces stage-side leads each and every time you give it. So you can turn 1 gig into 100 through the power of compounding gigs over time. Now, I can prove to you why the #1 litmus test for whether or not a speech is going to be able to be commercially viable and sustain a speaking career by just demonstrating the business model that most speakers bureaus rely on. So if you work with a speakers bureau, and by the way, most speakers bureaus don't want you until you don't need them.
Less work for them then, right?
If you're already, booking lots of speeches at a high fee, oh, they love you.
Like, let me just negotiate. Let me just negotiate, take a little cut.
Absolutely. But if you're starting at zero and there's no demand for your speech and your speech is effectively worth zero because there's no demand, the meeting planner is not particularly excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
They want you to be at a place where you already can book speeches at a fee that makes their commission a commission that is worth working for. Yeah. But back to the business model for the speakers bureaus. So speakers bureaus, and I think this is perfectly fine. I think it's perfectly appropriate. I want to be really clear about this. I don't think that there's some problem with the bureaus that operate this way. And I worked with bureaus, not exclusively in my career, but on and off when they would call. Most speakers bureaus require that you agree contractually to give them the same commission that you gave them for the speech they booked, mm-hmm. or any other spin-off speech that you deliver in perpetuity based on a lead that came from that initial gig. So for example, Marissa, let's say you gave a speech at Coca-Cola and they booked you. So you gave them 30%. Well, then someone came up to you at that speech and said, hey, this was great. It'd be great for our event at Pepsi. And so then you're obligated to either tell the bureau and then they'll mm-hmm. negotiate it for you, or you book it and then you just send them a cut of 30%. But then you go to the Pepsi one and someone comes up to you and says, this was great. We're from Schweppes, although Pepsi mm-hmm. probably owns Schweppes. I don't know. We have an event. And so every single time you do an event that keeps spinning off from that first event, you owe the meeting planner a check. Now, there might be a few managers who don't do that or a few bureaus who don't do that. But for the most part, that's the model.
And if our goal is a referable speech, then that's a little bit of a problem there.
But they can't, it's not, speakers bureaus have a very difficult time sustaining their businesses without all the spin-off work.
Sure.
Because
right.
Otherwise what happens is they have to book thousands of first gigs. And so if that's too much for a speakers bureau who are in the business of booking gigs, that's too much for a speaker to do, because you don't want to book 50 first gigs a year. You want to book one gig that turns into those 50 and then another 50 and then another 50. That's the model that is most effective. I mean, look, speaking of speakers bureau, Big Speak and Jay Baer, who Jay Baer is a very, very popular surprise and delight speaker. We worked with Jay, lovely human being. They did a study, a survey of meeting planners, and they asked them for the top 3 ways they find their speakers. And the top 3 ways they find their speakers were all through stage-side leads or referrals.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, the proof is there. The reasoning's there for it. And again, it just is, you're giving so much insight to everyone here, and we'll be sharing the recording across others as well, but just into and how this industry has changed in so many ways. And it's not just the location, as we say, like the post-pandemic location change, and see what other opportunities have emerged. And I also love, and we won't dive too far into this right now, but I love when I got to experience CORE back in 2020 was the, you had your keynote, but what's your workshop look like? What's your Q&A? What are the other formats that you're thinking about too? That you also have kind of in the mix with your keynote as well, which I think is so important for people to think about, and how you can offer different formats for different audiences.
Well, let's talk about that. Because one of the things that I think a lot of folks who are on the webinar are probably doing right now is a fair amount of breakout sessions. Because if you're not getting the keynote spots, then the meeting planner might be offering breakout sessions. And the thing about breakout sessions is that they're often not paid. Now, sometimes they'll pay for breakout sessions for some speakers, but they're often not paid. Now, why are they not paid? Well, the meeting planners run out of budget by paying the keynote speakers, because that's their marketing. That's essentially their marketing budget, is hiring the, famous keynote speakers. So the meeting planner, so here's the thing. Okay, let me back this up for a little bit. Let me sort of contextualize this. So what kind of speeches are delivered from the keynote stage when they're delivered by high-level professional keynoters?
Mm-hmm.
What we call visionary speeches. Not how-to type speeches, visionary speeches, because keynotes are designed to change the way people feel and think, and then ultimately act. But what the meeting planner wants is, the meeting planner wants those audience members to change how they feel, right? And then see the world differently, so their mind is blown. So visionary speakers are the ones who are usually put on the keynote stage. Visionary speakers cost a lot more. In the breakout rooms, generally, if you look at a conference agenda, most of the sessions are how-to type sessions.
Sure.
Now, you would think, oh, the meeting planner is just very smart. The meeting planner is thinking, well, do the visionary sessions and the keynotes, big, general, change the way you see the world. And then in the breakout rooms, we'll do these really practical how-to type sessions. Now, that may be the case, and that may be good programming.
Right.
But if the meeting planner could book 50 visionary speakers,
Whole
they
thing.
probably
Whole
would.
thing. Right.
So it's a little bit of the chicken or the egg thing, because, I've been doing this for 20 years and I've seen the industry, develop over these last 20 years. And as the conferences have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, the breakout rooms have gotten more focused on how-to type speeches. And so at first I thought, oh, maybe that is because they really want to program highly practical stuff for the breakout rooms. And I think that's what often, that's what meeting planners think they're doing. And that's what speakers think they're responsible for. But actually, if you deconstruct the model, who can you get to speak for free? Experts.
Experts for sure. Yeah.
Because what happens is the meeting planner says, hey, listen, expert.
Especially if that expert happens to have a new book coming out soon.
Exactly.
They're extra eager to get in front of us.
You're an expert and we need you to do a breakout session. It's going to be amazing for you because you're going to get so much exposure and you're going to pick up all sorts of clients because you're an expert. And, the expert's thinking in their head, well, geez, people do die of exposure, but okay, I guess this is what I got to do. Okay. And so because so many experts will do those sessions for free, the meeting planners rely on the experts. And so what's happened is it's become very normal just for breakout sessions to be Expertville sessions.
Yeah.
And keynote sessions to be Visionary Town sessions. But if you want to get to the keynote stage, an Expertville speech is not going to take you there. And certainly not a speech that you're winging just because you're an expert and you know your stuff and you can talk about it. That's not going to get you to the keynote stage. The keynote is a very different stage. So you may not want to go to the keynote stage, but if you want to sell a lot of books, you got to go to the keynote stage. Because the bigger audience is if you want to sell a lot of books.
Sure.
So if you're an author, that's where you want to be for the most part. Now, there might be value in doing breakout sessions as well. When I was in the keynote circuit, I did breakout sessions and visionary sessions. I did both. I did them both in the same time. I do a keynote at visionary, then I go do a breakout session 2 hours later. I just wanted to be all over the conference wherever I could. I had nothing was beneath me and nothing was above me. Like if I'm there, I want to work because
that's all that matters.
I work, the more helpful I can be.
Yeah.
So, and so I think this is a really important concept to understand because, experts were really valuable throughout most of history. And there's still certainly a value that an expert brings, but the world has changed a bit in large part because of YouTube. Because you can go on YouTube and you can get advice or information or how to help from thousands and thousands of experts on any given topic. You want to learn how to prompt GPT? There's thousands of people saying, I'm an expert in this. I'll show you how to prompt GPT. You know, I got hacked. My Facebook got hacked and I couldn't figure out what to do because, you know, like Facebook is not sitting there waiting for me to call them. I wrote them 20 emails. They wouldn't write back. So I found some dude on YouTube from, I think it was from Thailand, who gave a tutorial video on how to do it, like how to get someone at Facebook to call you back. He's an expert on it. I didn't have to pay a thing. And so with the rise of expertise, Expertville has become more crowded.
Sure.
So what happens in an economy when you have more and more and more and more supply of something with the same amount of demand? Or even if you have a little uptick in demand, but you have a much bigger uptick in supply, what happens? The value of what is being offered goes down. It starts to become a commodity. So experts often on the speaking circuit are seen as commodity speakers. And a commodity speaker is not going to get paid the big bucks, and they're generally not put on the keynote stage. The visionary speaker, the person who lives in visionary town, has a lot more real estate. You know, they're hobnobbing at cafes with Brene Brown and Malcolm Gladwell, you know, and Seth Godin and folks like that who are doing visionary stuff. If you see a Seth Godin speech, you know, he's a marketing genius, but he's not going to tell you where to put the opt-in on a website.
Right. You're not getting that how-to. Yeah.
No, he's going to change the way you think about marketing forever. And so that's the visionary stuff, but that requires craft, both on the script development side, meaning on the ideation, the scaffolding, the structuring, the script writing. And then of course, on the performance side, so you can deliver a speech that is entertaining enough to live in that category of surprise and delight. Just remember, when meeting planners are buying from you, they're buying the speech first, then the idea behind the speech, and then you. So you want to put as much work into the speech itself as you do on a book.
Yeah. So speaking to that, Michael, and you mentioned the chicken or the egg earlier, and you know, in this order of the idea of the speech, where all of it comes into play, where would you put the book in that order in terms of maybe not necessarily its importance for the speaker agent and how interested are they in, or the events coordinator and interested, whether you have a book that recently came out, a book coming out, but you know, when we think about I talked to someone just this morning and we had a conversation around, she has a book idea, she's working on it, she wants to be a speaker, she's not speaking yet. And so is it book then speaking? Is it speaking then book? Do you feel as though there is a chicken or the egg in that scenario overall?
Yeah, sure. So I'll share what we've observed over the years. And it's important that I preface this, and pretty much everything we do at Heroic, we see this way. We don't think there's one way to do anything. Sure. And everybody's path is going to be a little bit different because there's so many X factors involved.
Of course, yeah.
And there are so many timing issues that come into play. You know, if you come out with a book, you know, that's perfect for a post-pandemic world, great. But if you come out with a book that's all about like networking in person the day after the pandemic, nobody's buying it. So timing matters. Like lots of stuff is you can't account for until it actually happens. And then of course, there's the individual themselves and how much effort they're willing to put into going after and getting what they want. So, so here's the thing. I'll start with supply and demand. If you have a book coming out, but it hasn't shot up to the top of the lists because there are all these pre-orders and
Mhm.
nobody knows it's coming out, and maybe a few people care, that doesn't mean anything to the meeting planners.
Yeah.
If you have a book that's come out and it hasn't shot up to the top of the lists and doesn't get a lot of sales, I mean, the meeting planner might like it, but it's not going to be the thing that they care most about.
Sure, it's not tipping
There's
point.
only one thing that they fundamentally care the most about, and that's, can you deliver a speech that every single person in that room puts down on a piece of paper that it was a 10 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
They're not buying the book from you, they're buying the speech from you. And if you have a best-selling book, like a big book that their audience is familiar with, well, that puts you into an A-list alternate category or an industry icon category. And yeah, you're going to get more money for that, but they're less concerned about the speech when you're in that category.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can deliver a surprise and delight speech and be a best-selling author, well, then you're doing Malcolm Gladwell, Brene Brown level work.
Yeah.
Because Brene Brown delivers a killer speech. And that's why she gets probably $250,000 to do one speech, but she's earned it.
She's made her way up there. She wasn't making $250 on the
that
one.
people really want.
Right.
That's the ticket. So, so I think that's important to remember, that I wouldn't rely too much. You know, I've written, as I said, 9 books. Some of them are multiple editions. You know, so really, I think 5 new books, and then the rest are all different editions. But you know, I would say there isn't a day that when somebody says to me, you know, oh, something about one of my books, they usually say, oh, I've read your book.
Mm-hmm.
Not, oh, I know about all of your books.
All of them.
No. Or, for example, here's what happens a lot. People will come to an event at Heroic because they were referred. And the second day at the event, they'll come up to me and say, wait, you're the same guy who wrote Book Yourself Solid? You're that, I saw the book over there, and then I just put 2 together. I read that book, and that book, like, I booked my whole business because of that book. You're the same guy?
Yeah.
So my point is that people they don't even know half the time. They're not tracking things about you the way that you're tracking things about you. And meeting planners aren't generally either.
Right.
And so, yeah, it helps to have a book because it's a nice, you know, credibility builder. But just having a book for credibility is not going to make that much of a difference. You need a book that people read. And there's one litmus test for whether or not a book will be successful. And hint, hint, it's the same thing for a speech. When somebody reads it, do they tell somebody else to read it? If when people read your book, they do not tell other people to read it, it's not going to sell. Yeah. Which is why people do these big campaigns right at the beginning, and they, you know, jump up to the top of a category in Amazon, and then a week later, no copies are sold because people aren't saying, read the book, read the book, read the book. Now, you might be in that place. Like, as I said, some of my books have been real big hits. Others have been not that interesting to my readers. And it's important to remember that this is an artistic field. There's a craft that supports it, but you never know what is going to be a hit.
Right.
And so you can't think about this work as you. Think about it as the products you're creating, the books you're writing, the speeches you're making, and some of them will be hits and some of them won't be. Like, look, if all the publishers at all the publishing houses, if all of the acquiring editors knew what would make hits, they'd only buy hits. They have no idea. I mean,
love that on the PR side too. I'd love to know for everybody we're bringing on. Yeah, we got you.
Yeah, look, if it's a Barack Obama book, done. You know, that's such worldly fame. It's a whole nother level. But for regular authors who aren't worldly famous, they don't know, and they're going to take a shot sometimes. But if they put out 90 books in a quarter, or, you know, in a season, well, maybe 2 or 3 are huge hits, and that makes their quarter. It's just like venture capital. They will invest in 100 companies and 2 of them go public. They're making, you know,
Your
a
lead
lot of
title,
money.
lead product,
And so
yeah.
you got to think about your speeches and your books in the same way. If you write a book that's not really, taking off, okay, write another one. If your speech is not taking off, fix the speech, or maybe the idea is not saleable. You got to figure out a new idea, do a new speech. And so Andrew Davis, who is one of our partners, he's my co-author on the referable speaker. He's really the mastermind behind the speaking of business at Heroic. And he does a new speech every year. And so generally he has 4 speeches that he's selling at any one time. Now, I do not recommend you sell 4 speeches at any one time in the beginning of your career, but he's been on the circuit now for 12 years. So he's in a different place, but he does a new one every year because he doesn't know which ones are going to be hits. And so 2 of his speeches sell like hotcakes. 2 of his speeches are not selling like hotcakes. So he's working on those speeches to try to get them better so that they get more stage side leads. And what he does is he adjusts his prices for the speeches, because remember, you're selling a product, you're not selling yourself.
Yeah.
The speeches are different, cost different amounts based on the demand. And he drops the prices on speeches that are not selling well in order to sell more of them, to produce more stage side leads, to produce more demand, to raise his fees. And so if you look at it like an actual business, not a vanity business that's about, like being a celebrity, then you become, you still stay invested in your work because you care deeply about it, but you become a little more detached from the actual product itself. And so you can change it more easily without, freaking out, getting upset. I can't believe I worked for 3 months or 6 months on this thing and now I'm not going to use it. When you're doing something that's creative, you might spend 6 months on something to realize that you've got a better idea. But that 6 months is what got you to the better idea. If you had had that better idea 6 months ago, you would have used it, but you didn't. You needed those 6 months to get there. Now, as you get better at this work, you'll get to the better idea in a month instead of 6. And so you get quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker, but that just comes through mastery over time. Then the last thing I'll say is that generally we suggest speech before book. And you may think that's biased because, we help people with their speeches, but we are developing a whole book writing, very, very high level programming with AJ Harper, who is our head coach on our head coach on the writing side for speeches. We've been working together for 7 years now, I think. And she's taking a lot of her work and she's bringing it into the book curriculum at Heroic, so that we can build it, scale it, offer it to more people, because we've got an organization that can support that for her. But the reason I mention it is because she says the same thing, because a speech is something that you can get to market quickly. You can aerate and iterate quickly. You can test ideas quickly. With a book, it's a lot harder to test ideas quickly and get feedback on the ideas quickly, because you can be delivering a speech to audiences and getting paid and still making it better. But once you put the book in print, that's it. All you can do is promote it.
Yeah. And I'm gonna add to that. I would fully agree with you on that too. I would rather see speech before book as well, Michael, because speech is going to help build network. It's going to help build presence, and your book is going to sell more to your warm leads, to your network that you build around you, who are already followers of your message, who are already trusting of your message and see value in your content. And so I love whether it's a speech or whether it's your social media content, you're giving those tastes of your content. And really the book is the full entree then when they're really diving into that much more extensive detail that the book can get into. And so I think it's so much more helpful when we get up to a launch and we have someone who's coming in with that network they've been able to build around this experience through speaking, through whatever, consulting, or whatever they're doing, just to build that network around you. Having those people ready to go.
You want to sell to a publisher, first thing they're going to ask you is, so do you give speeches
network?
on the book?
Yeah.
And if you say, no, I haven't done anything, then I go, okay, call me in a year.
Who are you
If
selling
you
your
say,
book
oh
to?
yeah, I've been speaking
Yeah.
on this regularly for the last year. I've built up
Mhm.
an audience around it. They're gonna go, oh great, let's do it. Sheila said, for me, I found a book has helped me figure out the best angle to speak about. That's great. That's fantastic. It
Yeah.
absolutely can. And the speech can often get you there faster. Now, if you already have the book, but you don't have the speech, well, then you did the book first, you do the speech second, it's no big deal. We have
Right.
hundreds of people who come through at Heroic who do that. What we find though is our graduate students, after they've gone through grad, even if they've done a book or two or three, their process starts to change because now they have a process that's fast for the speech development. And then
Mhm.
that helps them produce all the content for the book so that by the time they do the book, instead of taking a year and a half to do the book takes 3 months.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just the clarity that comes from it is so
Yeah.
helpful there. I want to address a couple of our questions. We have a few minutes left here. And I'm going to go back up to Jess, who had asked about dropping a speaking fee in exchange for bulk book buys and such. Just have like kind of broad strokes there, Michael, even in your own experience of kind of going into a book launch, and do you ever see that it's ever like frowned upon by the coordinators and such, where they're like, oh, I don't want to worry about the book buy? Is it a turn off that ever, or do they really want someone where the fee is just going to come into play, or how much do we want the book to be involved when we are coming up to that launch, and it is such a strategy we think about?
Yeah. Well, it depends, doesn't it? It depends on a couple things. Number one, depends on how you make your money. If you're a professional speaker and all of your money comes through speaking fees, and you spend 2 or 3 months giving up speaking fees and selling books, then you may have a really, really, really weak quarter, and cash flow.
Balance that checkbook a little bit.
Yeah. So that may be a little bit tricky. It really depends on your financial situation. If you're in a situation where you don't have to earn anything on the speeches, well, by all means, just sell lots of books instead. Say, look, buy X number of books and I'll come. It can be a little bit of a hassle for the meeting planners if you're asking them to buy more books than they have audience members. If it's 300 people and you're saying, well, it'll be 500 books, they think, what am I going to do with these 200 books? Like, I don't have a warehouse for them.
Right.
So it can be a little bit tricky, but there's another way that we found very effective over the years. Certainly when a new book came out, we would do a certain amount of bulk orders in exchange for speaking for a month or 2 or 3. And I was in a position to be able to do that. But ongoing, what we did was this. So often what speakers do is they'll charge a keynote fee or a fee for a breakout or workshop, whatever they're doing. And then they'll do add-ons. Well, it's this much for this number of books, and it's this much, to do a meeting with the sponsors, and it's this much to do a Q&A, and it's this much to do also a breakout, and it's this much to do a book signing. And all of a sudden it's like you're going to the car dealer and, they say, well, this is the base model, but if you want wheels, it's going to be another $5,000. You're like, wait, the wheels don't come with it? No. What about a steering wheel? Oh, that's going to be $1,000. Oh, wait. Okay. Seats, another, so you hate buying that way. Nobody likes buying that way. So the meeting planners don't love buying that way. Generally, people love buying when everything's included. That's why the all-inclusive resorts are so popular. They're so effective. You can go, okay, that's the one fee and I get everything and I can have as much as I want. And rarely do people actually eat more there than they do. I mean, unless it's like a, celebrity cruise line, that's different, but like a nice resort somewhere. So we say use the Happy Meal pricing instead, so that you have a whole list of items that are included when you sell your speech. So it's a keynote, a breakout, a Q&A, videos before the speech, videos like promotional videos that you give them prior to the speech, videos that are after speech, wrap-up videos, a meal with the sponsors, which is great for you because they're sponsoring other events. And if they like you, they'll recommend you. And people take the speakers that sponsors recommend because they want those sponsors. It's all very incestuous. And this way, when you sell it, you say, all of this is included. I'm going to be there. This is the fee. It also helps with the negotiation because what you can do, instead of dropping your fee, you can just say, oh, I'll just pull things out of the Happy Meal so I can adjust the fee of the Happy Meal. You're
Right.
not lowering the fee for your keynote.
Right, right, right. Yeah.
So what you do is you put a certain number of books in the Happy Meal,
Mm-hmm.
but you make, before you put the Happy Meal together, you make sure you know what the estimated size of the audience will be.
Sure.
And so let's say the estimated size of the audience is 300. In your Happy Meal, you put 150 books.
Mm-hmm.
So then they get the Happy Meal and they go, we got 150 books. Shoot, what about the other 150? Can we buy those? Absolutely, no problem. So you sell
Love it.
another 150. It works very well.
No, so smart there, Michael. A couple of quick questions. I want to jump over to Ryan over here, and I've got Andrea and a really fun question from Atul as well here. I'd love to speak really quickly to your thoughts on TEDx, the TED stage. Is that? I'll leave it there. What do you think?
It's great. Let me real quick, just because I noted the time, I just want to mention something. You know, you heard Marissa mentioned CORE a couple times, and it's this 2-day event. It's a celebrated event, and we do them throughout the year at Heroic, our campus in New Jersey. And we don't charge for those events. Now, the reason we don't charge for them is because we like to demonstrate our value by demonstrating our value. And it's very hard to understand what we can do for you until we actually do it for you, because you've probably never experienced what we do. Not just because we're great at it, but because it's not typical. And so the only way we're able to do that is by referral, because we can't just, say, hey, anybody can come to one of these events, because we only have 60 seats in the campus. And so if you want to come to one of those events, you put a $1,000 deposit down and we give it to you back in a check when you get there, just to hold your seat. But other than that, there's no charge. And we feed you and, give you ice cream.
Great ice cream.
Great ice cream.
Great ice cream.
And what you do is you go to, you can certainly just email us. You can email amy@heroicpublicspeaking.com. Just say, I'm from Marissa, or I'm from Smith Publicity. But you can also go to the link that they put out on the chat called heroicpublicspeaking.com/Smith Publicity. There's no affiliate link in there. There's no kickback to Smith Publicity, but we put that link together so that when you go to the website and then you ask to have a 15-minute phone call to be vetted for CORE, we know you came from Smith Publicity, so we'll A, prioritize you, and B, consider that your referral, because without the referral, it's very difficult to get in. It's not a guarantee that you will, because you need to be vetted first. We just need to make sure, A, you're not a mean, horrible, nasty person. I'm sure you're not, but we have a very high bar for kindness and thoughtfulness. It's a real community, a safe space psychologically and of course physically. And so we vet everybody to make sure that that they're right for the environment, but also that what we do is actually for you. That you're looking for this high level of training. So, feel free to go over there and see if we can get a spot for you.
And I'm not going to waste much time because the group chat is just talking about how great it is, but I'm just going to add in that it is an amazing experience. Please just at least
so
more
TED
more.
Talks, Marissa. TED Talks can be great. TED Talks are a great place to work out an idea, to aerate it, to see what the feedback is like. You might get really lucky and that thing might spread and lots of people will watch it. Because, we've all seen Mel Robbins got famous because of a TED Talk. Brene Brown got famous because of a TED Talk. And so we think, oh my gosh, I'm going to do a TED Talk. Everybody's going to see it. And then I'm off to the races. So all of my students have a love-hate relationship with me. They absolutely love me because they know I love them and I will fight for them to the death, and I will train them and challenge them and give them everything I have. But they also sometimes get frustrated with me because I always tell the truth. And the truth is, just do the math on TEDx events. If you're thinking that the TEDx event is going to make you famous, recognize that there are 45,000 TEDx speeches a year. And TED only takes 45 of those speeches to put onto their website.
Yeah.
So those 45 speeches are going to get millions of views because they're on TED.
Right.
But the rest of the speeches, maybe. So it could happen. I'm not saying it won't, but have realistic expectations and understand why you're doing it. And one of the reasons to do it is to get good video. So don't do a TED event that doesn't have great video, because the video is what's most important for you coming out of that event. And then number two, you want to aerate an idea and see how people respond to it. That's another great reason to do a TEDx event.
Wonderful. We're at 3 o'clock. I want to do one more quick question if we can. And this is Ryan over here asking about, landing opportunities based on relationships. And we read referable speech, spent a year honing his speech, landed 2 high-fee gigs to private companies that got great feedback. Landed those based on relationships he already had. Once you have a speech you feel strongly about, what are the best tactics to start land gigs with people that you don't know? So is there anywhere you go first for finding those inroads?
Yeah, so generally we don't recommend, like emailing or cold calling meeting planners. It's a pet peeve of them because they get hundreds of those a week.
Yeah.
And so, it's not everybody's favorite answer, but there's a way to do it. It takes a little bit of work and it takes a few months. So generally what you want to do is you want to try to book as many gigs as you possibly can in a 90-day period. And most of these are going to be free gigs when a speech is new, because there isn't demand for it. And so if there's no demand for it, you need to produce that demand. So what you do is you go to your own buckets. You got 4 of them. You go to clients to see if they have opportunity to put you in front of lunch and learns or other events that they have connections to. You go to the associations, you go to the local ones first, then the regional, before you go to the national or international, because they're always looking for speakers. They need the speakers. You go to executives that you know personally or professionally, because they always need speakers to come in and do their in-house events to add value to their employees. And they may give you an honorarium, not a lot of money, but still it starts to move the speech forward, and it also improves the quality of the speech because you can iterate and aerate through the process. And then also you want to use other speakers. Other speakers are the best. I know
Yay.
Other speakers will produce some of the best opportunities for you. So a working speaker who's a paid professional speaker, if they do 50 gigs a year, they'll get about 150 to 175 leads a year. And so about 50 of them are really just going to be, like people just kicking the tires. 50 of them will be people who have the money and can buy them. And then 50 of them will be people who really need a speaker, really want a speaker, but can't afford that speaker. But they're just hoping. So what that speaker will do is say, listen, I got 5 people that I know who'd be perfect for this. Let me introduce you. And so if you're not spending a time networking with other speakers and getting to know other speakers, you're probably missing out a lot of opportunities. And so those are the buckets that you want to pull from. Try to book as many speeches as you can within a 90-day window to start producing stage side leads to kick off the power of compounding gigs. It's not a formula. It's not going to work exactly the same for everybody. It's going to be a different pace for everybody. We wish it was easier. It does take work, but this is a pretty amazing, privileged business to be in. If you're getting $25,000 a speech, you're pretty lucky. Like that's amazing. Like you'll make in a month what most people make in a year just by doing 3 speeches.
Right.
So it's and so if we think that, oh, it's just going to fall into my lap and other people should do it for me, maybe we're not thinking about it the way we need to be thinking about it. It takes some time. You gotta put in some effort. So there's that. And then the other thing, here is a reach out technique that you can use that's really quite effective. People don't realize, but the session description is the #1 marketing tool for a speech.
Really?
#1 marketing tool. If you look at most session descriptions for speeches, they sound the same. They sound the same.
Yeah.
Just like most jacket copy for a book sounds the same.
Right.
When you have a session description that stands out, that is incredibly relevant to the person who's reading it, then all of a sudden doors open for you. Because what most people do is they they think they're supposed to customize the speech for different audiences.
Mhm.
That's not right. Experienced meeting planners don't want a custom speech because
Well,
they
the
know a
same thing
customized
was
speech.
great.
Well, they know a customized speech is not yet a well
Well,
rehearsed speech. Just the
right,
first
right.
time you're doing it, I don't want to pay for the first time. And
Oh.
if you have to customize it for my audience, I know it's not right for my audience. I'm going to buy a speech that's tested, that works, that's already been built for my audience. An inexperienced meeting planner, like when they put the marketing manager in charge of booking the speakers for a little conference, that person thinks it's genius. Oh, you're going to customize it for us. That's amazing. But not the experienced meeting planner. So what you should be customizing, however, is the session description for the same speech.
Mhm.
And so what you can do is you can identify fractals that you want to go into, specific sort of smaller branches on the end of, you know, the tree
Yeah.
that are that you can target, and you can, if you can identify the publishers of different publications in that space, what you do is, and you know, online publications, print publications, whatever, they all have conferences, or they're all connected to conferences, or they're all sponsor conferences. And so what you do is you send them an email and say, hey, listen, I'm a professional speaker. I have a speech that I've just produced for this audience. Nobody knows this audience better than you. I would love it if you just took 60 seconds to look at the session description and give me your honest feedback. Tell me if you think this resonates or not. Like, will the audience go, yes, I want that? I would so appreciate it. Nobody knows this audience better than you. I want to thank you for your work. By the way, I read that article about X, Y, and Z. I thought it was brilliant. ... Now, these are people who don't get a lot of applause. They sit in an office somewhere. You know, they got to get everybody else out there writing, and they deal with all the famous people. All of a sudden, someone's coming to them and saying, you're the genius I need to hear from. And they'll write you back, go, no, this is crap. Doesn't make any sense. What are you talking about? Or they'll go, hey, that's really interesting, actually. Tell me more about that. Well, first they'll say, yeah, send it to me. And then you send it to them, and then they'll do that.
Right.
You're not going to get a response from all of them, but you'll get a response from a lot of them. And the ones that think it's good, they'll talk to you. And you may then get a breakout, you know, speech and you'll do a visionary session, the breakout speech, for free. But then from there, you might pick up stage side leads or the opportunity to do a keynote, you know, at the next place. And the last thing I'll say is, when you do breakouts, but you want the keynote stage, make an agreement with the booker or the meeting planner. If you're going there for free, say, okay, here's my deal. My deal is I'll come for free, but you've got to come and watch at least 15 minutes of the speech. Now, if it's not you, somebody else who's a decision maker that you respect has got to come and watch the speech for 15 minutes, because my goal is to get on your keynote stage. That's what I want, because that's where I think I can do the best work and be in service of your audience. And so that's my deal. That's the trade. And they go, oh, great. You got to remind them beforehand, by the way, because they'll forget. You don't put it in the contract. Yeah, right? It's not like that. It's just, you know, you just agree to it. Handshake deal.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And Tara, I said right before you even said that, breakout one year, keynote the next, and hopefully that you know, that presence in the back of the room will be leading to just that. So
that's right.
With that, I know we had other questions, but I want to be mindful of our time, and please, I know Olivia was sharing a lot of great links throughout, including both of our LinkedIn profiles. You have resources about Heroic, about Smith, about, you know, so much what we talked about today. We could have talked for hours, Michael, and kept going about so many different things.
That's my job. So, you know,
right,
I could definitely do that. But we got to go.
We got to go, but thank you so much to everyone who joined us. Michael, thank you so much to you. This was so valuable. We're excited to share the link out with everyone who is here, and others who want to check it out later on. So I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon. To everybody, thanks so much.
Thank you, Marissa. Great job. You did a great job.
Thank you. You too. Bye, everyone.